I'm Tom Johnson, Thomas Johnson Antique Furniture Restoration in Gorham, Maine. This is a nice long case clock. It's from about 1710, made by Edward Burgess in London. It has a square dial, which is very indicative of that period of time. It was damaged in shipping. Luckily the bonnet seems to be fine. That was not damaged, but the case itself was. The door has damage, pretty bad, broken off here, some molding off, lots of missing pieces of veneer, and we do have some of the pieces. Wow, these hinges are nailed on. I think I'll take the hinges off the case. I'll leave them on the door. It's less nails. There's two screws on each hinge. This has 4 screws, so I'll definitely take them off the case. Hopefully those screws will come out easier than the nails would. These side cutters I ground flat on the bottom. That's a modern escutcheon pin. It's not like an old nail. Now I'll put these pins and screws right back where they came from. I may or may not reuse them, but I just want to know exactly where each one came from. Viewers have often asked me what's the oldest piece I've ever worked on. Well, this clock case is 312 years old, so it's got to be right up there in the top 10. First order of business here is to glue this top piece back on the door. See, there's a little chip right there. I wanted to come up. I'm being careful, but it's important to get that back where it belongs ASAP. So we're going to be gluing side grain to end grain. People are fond of saying they don't make them like they used to, and I'll tell you, it's fine by me. Okay, we'll let this dry overnight. So while the door is drying, I can start working on this lower part of the case. There's a lot of loose veneer and pieces that have come off. So I'm just going to do this center section here. So off camera, I cut some pieces of MDF, that's medium density fiberboard. And I'm going to put 2 pieces underneath, 2 pieces on top, one of which is covered with plastic tape. And I've got this piece was saved, so I have that piece too. And I got this little piece right here. Oh, I almost forgot about this piece. Okay, leave these on overnight, but I can still get started on all the patches and pieces along the bottom boards here. I think I'm going to put a new piece all the way from here to the back here. Oh, I've got to add a piece here too, I just realized. But I'm going to sand this so I can see what this veneer looks like exactly, and I can use this veneer for other patches too. I'm going to take this off. It's just easier to sand while it's attached here. It's straight grain, but you know, the grain's at an angle. It makes me think this is the upper end of a crotch figure. And hopefully I'll be able to use these for some other veneer repairs on this piece. Getting ready to glue this piece down where I want it to be. I'm thinking about this piece of molding. I realize that the molding, the grain runs vertically, but I still need to, the molding goes on top of this veneer. So I think I want to do this veneer patch, get that clamped on, and then I'll clamp this on where it goes. This is what I mean by the outer regions of a crotch figure. Someone reminded me recently to use my rotary cutter. The veneer on the clock is so thick. I need to put 2 pieces in. I have to try to see what the grain looks like here. It's very difficult to tell. But it's got rays going out like that. See, this is what I mean. I feel like there's a crotch coming up and then going out like that. And I think where we are on this missing piece is right in here, where it begins to divide and go in different directions. Okay, let's get these clamps off and make more patches. Boy, it seems good. It seems nice and flat. I got a lot of glue to get off of here though. This is the area I want, but since I have to do 2 layers, I'm going to start first with just a random piece here and see how it fits. Okay, not bad. I would have liked to be up here, but my patch is a little bit too big. I think I'll come down to this point here. Yeah, not bad. I need a little adjustment over here. Luckily it's too long. I can just straighten that out. Oh, Jesus. Okay, this is my glue up from yesterday. For big sections, like the one I'm about to glue up, I like using this veneer. This is a 2-ply veneer from the Veneer Factory Outlet, Bob Morgan. And it's great stuff. You can see this is a big flame figure kind of crotch. And for this patch, I could take it right out of this end right here. I guess I gotta stop now. Okay, I'm anxious to get these clamps off. Still more work to do on the case, but I wanted to get back on this door. Oh, that looks good. That came back together well. Yeah, I want to get this glued up before I get back to the case. There's a lot of worm damaged wood in here, but this board itself seems solid. It seems where the molding is. I think I can glue, the molding's not structural, I think I can glue it back the way it was. And once again, just like the other end, there's cracking along this joint where the boards that make up the door are perpendicular to each other. In other words, there's a board underneath the veneer, the grain running this way, and at the ends there's a board with the grain running this way, and it broke right across here. So I'll work glue in all this veneer at the same time I glue the molding. Well, that came together well. So I'll be checking this to make sure there's not anything I missed. But in the meantime, there's loose veneer along both these edges, and I want to glue that down first. Here I'll be able to use some of the veneer that came off the base molding here. I wasn't able to use that old piece here. It shattered when I was trying to cut it. Okay, I'm anxious to see how these came out. Good, that's nice and flat. Everything seems like it's back where it belongs. That's great. That's good too. Now this right side, same story as the other side. I go around, identify all these loose places. Well, I'm hoping that that's everything on this base, but you know, that goes, it'll probably be something else. And so I've still got a bunch of these little moldings to glue down, and some that are on here are loose, and a few other odds and ends. If you look at the molding, it looks like it's supposed to have a bamboo effect. But that's not the case. When this was new, these were flat, and you couldn't see these joints. But the grain of the door is running this way, and the grain of these moldings is running perpendicular to it. They've all curled due to atmospheric conditions, and now they're loose. These are proving difficult to clamp because they're cantilevered over the edge. They're rounded on top, and a regular spring clamp is too powerful and it doesn't want to stay in the right place. It wants to keep pulling it off like that. So I like these pony spring clamps. They have adjustable tension, so I can make them much lighter, and I put double stick tape and a piece of 220 sandpaper on the top jaw, and that clamps it just the way I want it. I have the piece of inlay which goes here, but it's all worm-eaten. There's no wood in there. I'm going to use 5-minute epoxy to glue that down. That'll really help with this compromised wood too. Okay, I've taken all the clamps off this case. I'm getting off the excess glue with a damp rag, and then I trim and sand all my patches. Like so many details on this clock case, this molding, the grain doesn't run this way. The grain runs perpendicular to the case. In other words, not this way, but this way. All right, let's take these clamps off and do touch-ups. After carving as best I could, I've sanded with 100, then 150, and finally with 220. This is the large area I re-veneered, and I've sanded this entire side up to 220 also. Can't believe that my patch is darker than the surrounding wood. Luckily, it's all going to get stained dark brown. Let's see what the grain looks like. Got all my rays going in the right direction. Okay, it's time to stain. I've mixed together some extra dark walnut dye stain and some denatured alcohol, 50-50, and I'm going to try it on the edge of my repair area. That doesn't look bad at all. The color looks great. The main thing is that it's not too dark. The great thing about dye stains is you can go back and apply more and make it darker, or even use another color to change the color. But if it's too dark, you got problems. Okay, now we can get back to these doors. We got a pretty ragged repair area here. You can't fill it and sand it. It's not even remotely flat, although my caul helped a lot. I'm going to use a low heat burn-in stick to fill these. I call these hard wax because they remind me of ski wax. Of course, you'd be a lot better off if you just didn't put too much wax on in the first place. But that's difficult with a large area like this. But I'll use a gray Scotch-Brite pad and this rag to rub off all the excess. So these low heat burn-in sticks are great for irregular crack like this, especially on an area piece that you can't sand flat. And now I will pad these areas with the Lubricite padding lacquer. Okay, at this point I can get back to the case. This is dried for about 4 hours, so now I'll give this whole base a coat of shellac. Okay, this is dried overnight. Well, it looks good. I don't know that I need to do any color work, but regardless, I'm going to scuff this with a Scotch-Brite pad and put another coat on it. Even if I do need to do color adjustments, I want to get it well sealed and the grain filled and everything, especially on those areas where I sanded. So over the weekend, I put a third coat of shellac on this. I sanded with 500 paper, put a third coat on. Now I'm going to sand with 800 paper, go over it with a Scotch-Brite pad, and then polish it with this Lubricite padding lacquer. Okay, now I'm going to wax the entire case. I'm going to use this Gilboy's wax, and I'm going to apply it with 4/0 steel wool. Well, there you have it. A nice old clock, made in 1710. And of course it had a lot of damage during moving. The worst thing was the door had broken, top and bottom, and there was lots of damage to the molding around the base there. But I'm happy the way I was able to make all the repairs, but retain the character, not really change the nature of the piece at all. I think it looks pretty good. Doing these repairs, I used the bandsaw and the drill press and these tools and materials.
Good girl. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I'm Tom Johnson, Thomas Johnson Antique Furniture Restoration in Gorham, Maine. These are three nice antique chairs. They're called gondola chairs. Somehow this design resembles Venetian gondolas in some way. I'm not sure how, but they come from the American Empire period, 1830, 1860. They were very popular. There's a lot of these chairs around. And these three were handed down in the family, so they have sentimental value, and the people are interested in having them restored. This chair has a broken crest rail. We'll be taking this tape off and figuring it out. Some of the front legs have a bit of looseness to them. There's veneer work to do on these front rails. And then there's also damage to the existing finish too. All right, let's see what we got here. Ugh. Big chunk of wood missing. The dowels are broken. This piece has been broken before in the same place. This is a tough one. I gotta cut in some wood right there. This other side isn't as bad, but it's still a bit of a mess. In order to cut in new wood here, first step is I've got to secure this chair to the bench. So I got a bunch of pieces of scrap MDF and scrap wood, and I'm kind of getting it set up here. The way I've got this propped up is pretty good. I think I can do this with just one clamp. I'm planning on using a router, so I need a template. Try this. Oh, I think this template will work. It's good. Now I've got to secure the template to the chair or to here. I think I'll make some wedges that fit under here, and then maybe I can screw everything down into place. Okay, be warned, this little router is loud. I decided not to go any deeper. I've got a nice piece of mahogany here. I'll cut to fit in here. You can see the grain of this piece is kind of running this way. So I've got to square this off right there so I get my grain going in the same direction. I think I'll square this off. I have a little blip from the router there anyway. I'm putting some double stick tape with some sandpaper on these curved surfaces where the clamps will be. Okay, now I can tackle this backsplat. I need to get this out of here to glue on a new piece of wood. I'll use some heat. You can use water or hot water, white vinegar, or even hot white vinegar. I prefer heat because it's less messy. I like to keep the heat gun about 15 centimeters away from the surface. I'm watching the surface closely. I don't want to damage the finish. And I'll keep the heat on for about 2 minutes before I try it. I did front and the back for a total of about 5 minutes. Good. You may not have noticed, but this backsplat is veneered with a flame figured or crotch mahogany veneer. Here's a previous repair. Not too little messy there with the putty. The back is good. The color is good. You can see that this person used just a piece of solid wood, which is understandable. In fact, I'm going to do the same. It's not practical to try to veneer a small repair like that. Luckily, in my scraps, I found a nice old piece of mahogany that actually has figure in it. So I'll use a piece of this, try to find an area where the figure kind of matches this sweeping grain right here. Color is going to be a problem. This wood is darker. This wood is bleached out. Wherever I have to sand, it's going to lose that bleached area. But there's probably not much I can do about that. I've used double stick tape and 100 grit sandpaper on the back of this straight edge. I don't know how old this plane is, but however long Lee Nielsen's been in business, that's how old it is. I believe this is one of their first products. Flexible plywood. We call it wacky wood. It'll help keep my alignment. The other two chairs seem fine structurally, but they both have veneer problems on this front rail. Now these ragged edges, it's not worth trying to patch these. You might as well go all the way to the top with it. And then this particular front rail has so much missing that I think I'll replace all the veneer on the entire rail. The front rails on these chairs are book matched. I can't do that because I don't have a flitch of veneer. I'm hoping you can see that here. There's a joint and then the grains running like this, forming a upside down V there. I do have a flitch. A flitch is a stack of veneer, all cut from the same log, and the pieces are kept in the same order that they came from the log. And that way, you can book match them. In other words, act like this is a book, and here you get a mirror image of the pieces. I don't want to use this veneer because I'm saving it for a as yet to be determined project in the future, and it's way too dark for these chairs. I have a real nice piece of veneer here I'm going to use. I'm just going to go straight across. It's very similar to what was there, but it just won't be book matched. And you can't book match out of a single piece. You'd have tremendous problems with chatoyance. Sweet little scraper from Lee Valley. I have 4 mini scrapers that all use the same identical carbide cutter. These are the same cutters used on helical planers and thickness planers. This one from Baco has been around the longest. I mean, these have been around for many, many years. This Lee Valley is the newest one I've seen. The Woodpecker's been around for quite a few years. Hongdui, a little newer, but it's kind of cool. It's got storage for blades and things like that. They all work well. What makes a difference is the handle designs, which you may use one over the other depending on what kind of tight space you're trying to get into. I've cut a piece of masonite hardboard. It's very hard surface, but has just enough flex. I'm going to cover the hardboard with plastic packing tape. I wanted to flip this piece of veneer up, but because it's curved like this, it won't flip. All right. I tried segmenting the tape, but that didn't work either. Maybe I can do it just from the center. I'm thinking I can patch these in, and I hope I can use some of the same veneer I took off the other one. Here's a piece from the other chair, which I think will work fine. I sanded this a bit because I had scorched it a bit with the heat gun. You have to be careful with that. The syringe is filled with the old brown glue, hide glue. Okay, now we can get back to these repairs. I'm disappointed to see this opening here, but I'll fill that in with a piece of veneer. I'll glue a piece of veneer in there before I start carving this down. But the glue joint that counts, the back here, is fine. I'm going to fill all these voids with epoxy putty, smooth it off, and then drill for new dowels. I realized I can't really fit these joints until I put the backsplat in here, so I got to finish that repair. I made a sanding block with a little bit of a curve in it here. Got a pretty good grain match. The backsplat was glued all the way across its width. I'm only going to glue it in the middle to allow for expansion and contraction. I realized before I go any further on the front rails, I've got glue up to do on each chair. The leg is cracked. I don't want to take this apart. On this chair, I have this leg to do. I also have to a corner block here to contend with. I'm not going to take this one apart either because the other side is rock solid. That was a little bit of an emergency there because my wedge piece here was breaking this joint, so I probably should have made this not so pointy, and I also should have put a clamp there prevent that from happening. Anyway, it started, but it didn't happen. I was able to pound this together with the mallet and get a band clamp on it. Okay, everything's dried overnight. Let's see what we got. Boy, it certainly feels rock solid. All right, I've got a lot of shaping and filling some of these cracks to do. I'm going to use epoxy putty for those cracks. It can be really helpful to dip your putty knife and even your finger in water while you're spreading this epoxy putty. While I'm waiting for that putty to dry, I'll get this glue block back where it belongs. All right, the putty is dried enough so that I'm sanding this. I'm going to sand this smooth first and then go after this detail here. Okay, I've got all my repairs sanded. Now I'm going to wash them down. I'm going to use Crud Cutter, mild solution, about 10 to 1. So in other words, if I'm going to use a liter of hot water, I'd use about 100 milliliters of Crud Cutter. Okay, I'm going to let these dry. Okay, the chairs have dried for a couple hours. I'm going to go over them with 220 gold sandpaper. The finish is compromised in a few places, especially on this backsplat. It looks like moisture has gotten under the finish and lifted it up a bit. Maybe there were cracks in the finish. I associate that with nitrocellulose lacquer, but there's no telling what the finish is. I was thinking for a while that I would try to use solvent to melt this and amalgamate the finish, but there's so many rough areas of these chairs that need sanding. I thought I'd sand the entire chair, give it a coat of shellac, and see if that can solve this problem. You can see how beat these areas are, where these arms are, and also the feet. So I want to give these chairs a coat of shellac, and I want to give them the most even and the lightest coat I can, so I'm going to spray them. Okay, these look good. Now I've got to do a bunch of touch-ups. Here are the tools and materials I've assembled to do the touch-ups. I've got Scotch-Brite pad, rags, paper towel, tape, brushes, razor blade, markers. I've got lacquer retarder, dye stain, that's this stain, this is thinned out a bit in here, and aerosols. I'll go over it very quickly with the Scotch-Brite pad just to smooth it out, looking for any major nits. Here's that big piece I put in, but I think I'll try the back of it first. I'll try some dye stain. All that means is that someone has laid an egg. The solvents in the dye stain are compatible with the solvents in alcohol and lacquer, so it goes over pretty well. Sometimes a marker will work well. It's good to have a sharp one. This is a previous repair. I'll use toners for this. I'm using a medium brown walnut toner. I've waited about 5 minutes. I'm going to hit it again. That looks good. I'll touch up that putty with a marker. In the upright vertical position, my touch-up looks dark. It's funny because in the horizontal, it looked perfect. What I'll do is I'll take this medium brown walnut toner and kind of tone this area, but I'll be aiming at this lighter area above and the surrounding area. I'm going to hit just this area above with a little bit of extra dark walnut. It's just a little bit too light, too much contrast. Okay, I'll give these another coat of shellac, let it dry overnight, and we'll see what we got in the morning. Okay, all right, they look good. Now I'll figure out what the next step is. I need to just figure out the best way to rub these out. I'm going to take some of this orange oil and beeswax polish. I'm going to measure out about a tablespoon, about 15 milliliters. And I'm going to add just a pinch of pumice. I'm going to use 4/0 steel wool. With this rag I wipe off the excess, but then you're supposed to let this wax dry for at least 20 minutes. Well, it seems to have put a nice sheen on it. It's got a good sheen, it's knocked down a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the entire chair. Well, there you have it. 3 gondola chairs from the first half of the 19th century, and they're all mahogany. They were in kind of rough shape. This one was broken. I had to add a piece of wood in here. In fact, these chairs have been broken and repaired many times. It's amazing to see. There were some veneer repairs. Some of the joints needed to be re-glued. And then I ended up refinishing them basically more than I intended to at first, but I didn't appreciate how bad the existing finish was. And I'm glad I did. I think they look pretty good. I've got 16 hours in these chairs. I used the bandsaw, the stationary belt sander, and these tools and materials. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, hit like, and feel free to share it on any other platforms you might like. Thanks, I'd appreciate it. I'm Tom Johnson, Thomas Johnson, Antique Furniture Restoration in Gorham, Maine. This is a really nice settee. As soon as I saw it, I could see that it was old. Going through my books and studying these feet, these tri-fit feet, it really seems like it's Queen Anne. And it could be a period piece from the mid-18th century. I'll know better when we remove this upholstery and I have a good look at it. The main reason it came in was to have the back repaired. And you can see where it's got some worm damage, wood rot. There's a bunch of it all over here. You can see it's been repaired plenty of times in the past. Here's some kind of putty smeared over here. You can see there's a nail straight through this joint from the past. The back of it's pretty rough. There's all kinds of different things going on. Some weird breaks here. And because it's loose, it's especially loose in this particular back joint, the only way to really repair that is to remove the upholstery. And although the upholstery isn't bad, it's a little bit lumpy and needs to be redone anyway. So I'll be able to repair the back, re-glue the frame, and then we'll restore the finish somewhat. The settee's back from the upholsterer who stripped off all the upholstery. Luckily the tacking strips aren't bad at all. There's a few mysteries about this piece still unresolved. Some of these elements look really old, but looking at the inside of this, the wood is so smooth, it doesn't look that old, so I'm not sure. But I need to take it apart. And I think I'll start with the arms. I can see that there's 2 screws here at the base of each arm support. I'll start by removing those. Now these back joints are really loose, so we'll do those next. This is about ready to come loose, but I feel a little resistance, so I'm going to go check on the stretcher on the other side. So obviously I've got, this end is broken and loose. This end's very loose. This joint's a little loose. This one seems tight. I'm just going to tap and tap a little bit here and there. And then I might try applying some heat to the center one. And I see no other pins or nails or dowels or pegs or anything holding it together. So I'm going to assume it's glue. I've got so many loose points here. I really want to take it apart, repair these, and then put it back together. So let's see. I'm going to tap a little while, see if I can get something to happen. This joint and this joint seem to have plenty of looseness. At least I see movement there. This one seems really tight. I think I'm going to put some wedges in these joints and then apply heat to this, and hopefully a little tension, and then some heat will bring that up. This one's pretty much eaten up by bugs. Before we go any further, I better start marking things. Even though all these pieces seem kind of obvious where they go, I'm going to mark them anyway. Okay, this back splat seems tight. I'm going to leave it alone. This one's loose. I'm going to wiggle it out. And then I'll be able to take the side legs and supports off and have this completely apart. It's amazing how this joint was holding on so well, yet it's totally worm-eaten. There's almost nothing there. Something holding this up right here. Yeah, this is a peg. I can see it in the back here too. I think a peg goes all the way through this tenon. I'm just going to have to drill it out. I'm going to start with a 1/4 inch bit, which is smaller than this. I'm going to try to, as best I can, go right down the center of it. So I actually got that bit pretty well down the center of that peg. Now I'm going to move up to a 5/16 bit. Alright, so now it's all disassembled. The next step will be to go over each piece and repair all these tenons. I'll start with this leg and side support. We have a chunk that came out of there. It's really worm-eaten. And unfortunately, the chunk is not the entire piece. But we'll glue this into place, and then we'll have to cut in new wood. It's so worm-eaten. There's so little wood-to-wood contact. I think I'm going to use epoxy to glue that back together. Okay, the next joint is this one. It's a tough one. It's completely eaten up by worms. There's a tenon at the bottom of this back splat. It goes in here. I'll chisel out the mortise, and then I'm going to have to route out the back of this and add a piece of wood. Okay, the back splat itself, as you can see from this one, it has a good joint. There's no shoulder on the back. The tenon is part of the back. I think I'll mark off exactly where I want to cut. There's also a broken off mortise in this end of the crest rail. It's got a big old nail through it. You got to take the nail out and chisel, clean out that mortise. Alright, that's done. Now this end, let's see, this connects here, so that's got to be chiseled out, and I got to add wood there. Now this piece I'm going to epoxy, because there's just not enough good wood there to use regular wood glue. I'm going to apply some of this relatively thin clear epoxy so it'll soak into these pieces first. Then I'll add thickener and a little bit of color. So now I've cut the space for the replacement tenons. You know, the whole time I've been working on this, I'm wondering what kind of wood it is. The exterior of it is the color of and has the grain and everything of walnut. You'd swear it's walnut. But when you cut into it, it's very, very white wood. I don't know, maybe it's butternut. But anyway, I have a relatively light colored piece of walnut here, and I'm going to use walnut because that'll give me the color that I want on the exterior. Okay, that piece glued on pretty well. There are some spots to fill, but there's a big piece of wood missing. So I've got to put a new chunk on that. I have a piece of walnut I'm going to use, mostly because this is a walnut color and the grain looks right. I'll flatten this on the stationary belt sander. I realized as I was sanding this, I didn't really need to take off that much. There's a big void in here. I've got to chisel this out for a corresponding tenon, so most of that void will get filled by the tenon. In fact, because of this gap and because of how this is still worm-eaten, I'm going to use epoxy putty to fill this gap and use the epoxy putty as an adhesive for this piece. Okay, I've let this clamp on just for a couple of hours. Now I'm going to remove some excess wood, the easiest part on the bandsaw. You know, I'm getting close on shaping this, but I realized this shape here has to match exactly this corresponding space where this gets glued on. So I'll finish shaping it after it's glued up. So now I'm going to lay out and cut a mortise for this tenon. So I no sooner started chiseling when my new piece of wood started to split on me, so I've glued it back, and I've decided to use the Dowling jig to drill this out first. Then I'll go back with the chisel and clean it up. Alright. It was tough because the old wood is crumbly, but I'll try it on the tenon now. Not bad. It's a little loose side to side. It's good front to back. It's loose side to side. I may add some veneer in there. Alright, so the next step, I'm going to lay out the parts and start dry assembling it and adjusting and pairing all those tenons and the joints that I redid. So what I'm doing, as you can see, is I'm going to put this whole back together, the whole back of the settee, without glue. I'm trying each joint out, making sure each joint works the way it needs to work. Okay, I've got this all together dry without glue. Everything went together fine. Some of the joints are a little loose, so I have some veneer here. I might have to insert some veneer on some of these tenons. And I've got my glue heated up. So I'll knock it apart, and then we'll go for it. All right, that's pretty good. I was a little worried about the working time of the hide glue, but it's fine. And that's one good thing about practicing assembling something without glue. It went pretty smoothly. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. All right, I'm getting ready to glue up the rest of the bench here. One thing I wanted to mention was, when I first saw this, I could tell all the carvings were very old. I'm no doubt they're 18th century. But when the upholstery was removed, we could see the inside of these rails. The rails themselves were not old at all. We were very curious about that. I could see that this back piece here, I don't think was original, because there's a center piece that's not in the center. This is cut off. This piece of wood, which is a side rail, used to be something else. There's an old mortise here. And plus, these joints in the back had been pegged, but when we took this out, there's no hole through this tenon. The peg isn't doing anything. So there's no doubt that the rails of this piece must have been completely worm-eaten and destroyed, maybe from tacks also, and all the side rails have been replaced. All right, it's great to see this all back together finally. So now we can work on the finish. I still have some puttying to do. I'm either going to putty or wax some of these joints that didn't come together quite right. There's a few other places in the back. I may try to tint the putty, so I think before I do that, I'm going to experiment a little bit on the finish. I'm going to work on the back of this leg and this side of this leg. I want to see what this wants to be, color-wise. So I'm going to try just padding the back of this leg with a little bit of alcohol and sort of see what happens here. It's pulling off, some dirt or something, not changing too much, which is good. I think I'm going to try the inside of the front leg. Yeah, it seems to be a really nice kind of a dark walnut color. That's what I wanted to know. So now I'll go ahead and I'll do the putty things that I need to do, and then I'll start by cleaning the back. So I was experimenting with some epoxy putty, and I was adding color to it. And I was using epoxy putty because if you've seen in my other videos, you can scrub off the excess with a little bit of water and a gray pad. You don't have to sand. But it quickly became apparent that when I did that, it just took it down to the bare wood. There's very little finish on here. In fact, finish is kind of a kind word. It seems like it's just a lot of dirt or something. So I think what I ought to do is I'm going to gently clean this whole thing with oil soap and a rag. And then I'm going to pad finish on it, and then I'm going to fill all the areas that need to be filled. I'll be using either epoxy putty or wax, burn-in wax stick. I'm trying to strike a balance here between, just scrubbing it all the way down, getting rid of all this dirt. I want the beauty of the wood to come through, but I want to leave some of the dirt to keep it looking old, gently. A little at a time. Okay, I think I've cleaned it as much as I dare. I'm going to let this dry overnight. Alright, so I let this dry. Now I'm going to pad a little finish on the side rail and even going onto the leg a little bit, maybe up here, so I can get an idea of the color. The product I use to pad with is this is called Lac French. It's made for, I guess, French polishing, you call it. I'm going to pad it on this, give me an idea of what the final color will be. All right, I seem to have found a wax stick here that's a pretty good color match, I think. I'm going to try one of these top joints here and see how it looks. All right, I think that looks pretty good. The wax is perfect color. Around this joint, there's a little bit of discoloration here and there. I may or may not put a little stain on that later. But now I'm going to go ahead and, with my wax stick and the knives, fill in all these joints along the top and anywhere else I think it needs it. Okay, I filled in everything that I'm going to fill in, sanded some repair areas. Now I have some raw umber oil stain that I'm going to try. First I'll try it on an area that's not, that I cleaned some of the finish off, but not sanded down. If that looks good, then I'll try it in the area that got sanded. So I like the way it colored up this area. It kind of blended in. It's not making everything even, which is great. I don't want it to be even. I kind of, don't want to change this too much. Now I'm going to try it on this lighter area here. All right, that looks really good. I think I'm going to just go ahead and keep dipping my rag and go over this whole piece. I really like what it does to even the parts that I had not sanded or discolored in any way. All right, this is a fast running stain. It really dries in an hour or so, but since it's the end of the day anyway, I'm going to let it dry overnight. Okay, I've let the stain dry overnight. So now I'm going to apply a coat of shellac. This is shellac out of the can, and then thinned 1/3 with alcohol. So it's a little bit thinner. When the stain dries like this, when it flashes off, it looks very dull and looks dark. And you can't worry about what it looks like at that point. You have to, what it looked like when it was wet with the stain, that's what it's going to look like when I put the shellac on. Alright, this is dried overnight. It looks good, although it's still a little starved for finish on the back. I think I'll give it one more coat. But first, this area where I have new wood and then where the old wood got sanded a bit, that needs a little bit more color. First I'm going to abrade the area with a gray pad, and then I'll go over it with some dark walnut dye stain, but it'll be thinned out 50-50 with alcohol. Okay, I've let this dry for about 45 minutes, and in the meantime I sanded and gray pad the entire piece. I'm going to go over the part where I put the stain with just one brush stroke. Then I'm going to go on, I'm going to put the coat on the back splat here in this horizontal position, maybe even the legs too, so I can get the feet better. Then I'll stand it up. Alright, we'll let this dry till tomorrow. Alright, this is dried overnight. That second coat really did the trick. The wood is really sealed well now. Anyway, it looks great, except it's awfully shiny, so I'm going to see if I can cut that down. I've put some pumice stone into a shaker here. I've got my brush. That's cutting it down really nicely. So I'm going to go over the whole thing with the pumice. And then on the flat areas, just put some on the rag. Okay, so now I'll go over it with the good old beeswax polish. And I'll use a stencil brush that I use just for polishing. Okay, this is dried now, actually probably for an hour or so, and I'm going to take a paper towel and just wipe it off. Buff it out, I should say. All right, ready to go to the upholsterer. All right, back from the upholsterer. If you remember the settee, it was really broken up in this area here, but we basically took it apart, re-glued it. The side rails had all been replaced. They probably were worm-eaten and needed to be replaced. These elements, although appear to me to be very old, the carving is just fantastic. It looks great. It's a nice piece of furniture. It looks pretty good. I'm Tom Johnson, Thomas Johnson, Antique Furniture Restoration in Gorham, Maine. This is a really nice federal card table, which means it's made, between 1790 1810. It's made of it's beautiful mahogany veneer, crotch mahogany with satinwood banding. It's a card table because it opens up. And then this top is supported on the swing-out legs. This table's got a lot of issues. First and foremost is this leg has been completely broken off. The tenon is just, it's not so much a tenon, it's this whole piece here is just completely broken off. In addition to that, It's got a lot of veneer issues, a lot of loose veneer coming up, which I'll try to glue down. It's got areas where veneer and pieces of wood are missing. So I'm going to try to repair everything and then polish it up. We'll see what we've got. The top is screwed down to the base. I don't know if you can see, it's got a screw right here and around the perimeter. And so I think I'm going to see if I can take this base off, and that'll give me a chance to see better what's going on with this old repair of that leg also. I'm going to start with the repairs on the top because there's so many veneer repairs. I even have repairs around these hinges, but I'm not going to take these hinges off. Number one, the felt in the middle is one piece, so it's not coming apart. And these knife hinges are always very problematic, getting them on, getting them off. I think I'll just do the veneer repairs around the hinges. All this veneer right along the edge here seems good. I do have some repairs to do to this little piece on the edge, this beading, I guess you might call it. So I can use this to tape off this felt just to help protect it. This is interesting where this stringing is bowed way out. It's too long. It cannot be pushed back. I assume that the table has shrunk this way, and now I'm going to have to cut this to take some of the stringing away. So now I've cut this. It's still too long. I was hoping that the saw kerf would be just the amount I needed to take, and now I've got a difficult task of trying to trim this. I think what I'm going to do is glue down this part of it, and then when it's held solid in place with the glue, I'll be able to trim a little bit off of there. I've only recently learned that this tapping technique is called percussing. I learned that from a client who's a doctor. Okay, I've let this dry overnight. Now I can see how much I've got to cut this. Just a touch. In fact, I think instead of attempting to cut this piece that's still loose, I think I'll cut the piece that I glued, because it's being held in place. It'll be easier to cut. I still got to cut a little more. I think I'll use a chisel. Now I got a space there, of course. Try to scrape away some of the old glue. Tighter I can get that in, the closer it'll be to filling that little gap. Now I'm going to set this top aside. I've got lots of other places to glue. I'm going to set it aside so I can glue the leg on to the table base. Boy, now you can see what a mess we've got here. Not just a mess where it broke, but it's got all this glue all over everything. What's happened here is the people that made this table did what I'm sure they thought was pretty cool. What you have here is like a, I guess you'd call it a saddle joint, and it's dovetailed. I can show you the other side. In other words, they cut through their leg so that the apron runs through it, and with a really nice little dovetail here. But the problem is, in so doing, they only left what looks like about a little bit more than a 1/4 inch, 5/16 of an inch back here, and the same in the front. And so I've talked about this many times in the past. You think that you've got a leg this big, but you don't. You've really just got a leg that's 5/16 of an inch, but still they created this weak spot, which I'm sure the leg got hit with something, and it just broke off. So the first step is take the heat gun and maybe some hot water and see if I can get this glue off. Okay, I'm ready to glue the leg into place. I'm going to use epoxy because I have such a lousy joint here and there's so much space. Even though I'm going to come in from behind with a piece of wood to support it, I want to epoxy it. I'm going to need all the strength I can get. First, I'm going to tape off the front of this. I don't want to get any epoxy on the front of the leg. I can't clamp this leg too much. I'm going to set it here, out of the way place, and make sure I get the leg into position. Although I'm measuring my diagonals here, which look pretty good, I'm also just going to, I set it here so I can step back and take a look at it and see if the legs look correct. Alright, now I'll just let that sit there and not move till tomorrow. Alright, now I'll continue with finding a loose veneer along this edge and gluing it down. Here's a piece that's missing. I think I'll glue down a little piece of mahogany banding, then afterwards go back and do the little stringing along the top. Okay, I've let this dry overnight. Seems pretty sturdy, so now I've got to decide what I want to do in the back here. I'll set the top aside for a little while. Alright, well now I've got some repairs to do. I've got some veneer to glue down here, and I also have to rebuild this area where the broken leg was with the inlay. Good, while that's drying, I'll go back to work on finding more loose veneer on the top. Oh, that came out really smooth, and I'll still have to, fill in these cracks and smooth this a little bit. But now I've got to work over in this area. I got some chunks of wood missing here, and more importantly, some of this banding and inlay I've got to recreate. First step will be to start carefully chiseling out all this epoxy. So I need two different kinds of inlay here. I've got this what's probably tulip wood banding with two pieces of ebony on either side, and then below that I've got what's probably rosewood with holly on each side. Actually, they share that piece of holly between them. So let's see what I've got. Here's a piece that's really close. This is a large piece of inlay that I made. Here's a piece of store-bought inlay. I might just need to cut off the outside ebony stringing, and it leaves me with exactly what I want. You know, all along it was my intention to epoxy this leg into position and then come behind and route in a spline through this cracked area. This leg now is so solid that I'm afraid, and I'm always worried about this, that by cutting in the spline, even though the spline itself might be strong, that the areas around the spline I might be weakening the piece. So I've decided I'm not going to do anything to this. I'm not going to spline it. It's solid as a rock, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Sometimes less is more. I had to epoxy it back in place. The joint was so terrible, regular glue would never have held it. The epoxy seems like it's doing great, so I'm going to leave it at that. I realized as I'm devising my inlays for this very bottommost stringing that the opening here at the top of the leg is too wide. I don't know why that is, but it is. So what I've got to do, I've got a piece of mahogany here. I've got to have the grain running in the same direction as the leg, and I've got to cut just a tiny little piece of mahogany there and put that in at the top of the leg when I do this inlay. So I think I'll do that first. Now I've got a nice piece of thick veneer here that even has a little bit of this same kind of grain, to see if I can line it up in a similar direction. I've got an uneven surface here, and there's lots of little voids down in there that I'm gluing to. So I'm going to mix some hide glue with a little bit of sawdust and a little bit of powdered color, and hopefully that will then provide enough solids to fill those gaps and voids. So now for my next patch here across the top of the leg, I've cut 4 pieces of wood. 2 pieces of holly, a little piece of walnut, which actually, whatever kind of wood that is, it matches it really well. And I cross-cut this tiny piece of mahogany for the top of the leg with the grain going in the correct direction. I think what I'm going to do is attempt to glue all 4 pieces together. Then I will take them and trim them up and sand them and make them fit. Alright, this is looking pretty good. I just need to go over to the sander and take a little bit more off my extra mahogany I got on here. Alright, this looks good. It's really tight, but that's okay. I'll be able to clamp it down in there. I just want to say while we're doing this, these clamp marks here are not from me. They're from the last guy. Hopefully I'll be able to get rid of them. Okay, I'm anxious to take these clamps off, see how that little patch went. You can see that I've been finding other loose places. I'll probably continue to find loose places throughout the job. This looks good. Now I've got to clean out this area and do this piece of banding. Okay, here's the banding I'm going to use, and actually I have that piece of holly there, so I just need to cut this down to the tulip wood and then cut the ebony off that outside edge, and it should fit in there. It should fit in there just fine. Okay, I've got my pieces ready to glue in there. I cut a little piece of mahogany to go into the bottom because that whole space was a little deep for my veneer. But I'm going to set this aside, do this and glue them both at the same time. Alright, I'm looking forward to taking these clamps off and seeing how it comes out. Okay, so now I need to get back to this top. I've got some touch-ups to do and a little bit of bad scratches here. I'll start off by cleaning this top with just a little bit of a commercial cleaner here. I'm going to pad this a little bit just with some alcohol. I want to see what happens. I kind of like the way everything sort of disappears as I'm patting it. That's a good sign. I think I'm going to carefully brush some shellac into all these scratches and defects, see if I can fill them up a little bit. Then I'll see if I can level it off and then pat it. Good, now while that's drying, I'll get back to the repairs on the base. Looks good. I can start sanding this. I've got to trim up this piece here. Okay, I've sanded my whole repair area up here with, and this other area here up to 220, and now I'll seal it with some shellac. Okay, now back to the top surface. All the areas where I brushed in shellac, let them dry overnight. I'm going to try sanding with 800 gold first, see if that works. The 800 paper really isn't doing it. I'm not getting this leveled off as much as I'd like. I think what I'm going to do is sand this entire surface with 320 gold, and I'll brush on a coat of shellac. Okay, I've let this dry overnight. Most of it looks really good, except there's some funky areas over here. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to try padding it a little bit just to see what happens. I'm using a product that's made for French polishing, and I'm not going to use my own shellac. I think this will work really well. The padding is actually helping a little bit with those marks, but it's not going to get rid of them. Maybe what I'll do is sand this with really fine paper, 500 or 800, and give it another coat. Okay, back on the base, I've sanded this whole repair area with 100, then 150, and now with 220. I'm going to brush on a coat of shellac now onto this repair area. I'm going to seal it with probably a couple coats of shellac before I start doing color work. Back onto the top here, I've still got this little area I patched in. A coat of shellac on it. Now I'm going to put a little color on it. I'll let this coat dry and then put on another coat. This is maple dye stain and it's pretty thinned out. I may keep putting on coats, let it dry, put on another coat. My coats of shellac have dried overnight. Now the next thing I'm going to do is sand this area again. This is my repair area, and try adding some color, especially to my new pieces. See if I can get them to blend in. I'm loving these new little brush tip graining markers. Okay, so I've touched up a lot of the lighter areas. Now, you know, the whole part where I sanded and stuff is brighter. I'm going to tone it with a little bit of perfect brown aerosol. Alright, my coat of shellac went down pretty good. I think what I'm going to do is sand this with 800 gold and then rub it out with 4/0 steel wool. The banding here is not flat. I did not sand it flat. Even places I repaired, you know, it's got a lot of up and down, so I couldn't sand that area. I just got to be careful with the steel wool. I can see, you know, the steel wool cutting away the shininess, and I keep doing that until it's even. You just got to be patient. Yeah, this looks good and has a really nice sheen to it. That's just the shellac. I haven't even waxed it. I think I'll just need to go over it with my wax polish as opposed to paste wax or anything like that. Okay, I think the next step will be to assemble the base to the top. Then I'll polish it. Yeah, remember I taped the screws right with the holes they came out of. Okay, I'm going to go over this with beeswax polish. First thing I'll do is I'm going to take this plastic off and do this inside edge. So this is it, a nice little Federal card table. Opens up to play cards. Has two swing legs in the back. And if you remember, this leg was completely broken off. I re-glued it, repaired it, and replaced a lot of wood in here. There was numerous other veneer repairs. I actually didn't even show them all in the video. Glued down lots of places along the banding, lots of places on the edge. Everywhere there was missing, I put in new wood, especially around the hinges here. I put in some new wood. It looks pretty good.